And likewise 14-15 Celsius for Glasgow and Belfast, with those showers continuing across Scotland, Northern Ireland and Northern England. A blustery day to come as well, with a keen breeze, but the outbreaks of rain push through southeast England finally on Wednesday evening, clearing out of the way during the early hours of Thursday, and then clear spells for many as we start off Thursday. Temperatures mostly down to around 7 to 9 Celsius, a bit colder in the countryside. But a bright start for many, certainly much sunnier skies across a large part of England and Wales, and we keep the sunny spells and dry weather here into Thursday afternoon. Perhaps a thickening of the cloud in the north, and Northern England will see the odd spot of rain, but showers continuing for Western Scotland and Northern Ireland, and similar conditions on Friday with some rain or showers in the far north and northwest, drier further south, and then fine for all of us this weekend.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes & Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes & Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you, or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Today, it was the Queen's speech, albeit delivered by Prince Charles. 38 different legislative proposals, many of them just complete rehashes, it seems to me, from 2019 General Election Manifesto. And I've got to tell you, Westminster is not abuzz tonight. Tell me, were you inspired by the Queen's speech? Have I got this all wrong? Joining me on Talking Pints, Christopher Hope, Daily Telegraph journalist, a man who's written acres about me of newsprint. Not all of it that I've been happy with. It's my chance tonight to get my own back. But before all of that, let's go to the news.
Nigel, thank you. The top stories tonight. The Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer says the government isn't doing enough to address the cost of living crisis. MPs have been debating the Queen's speech delivered today. In fact, it's still going on, as you can see from those live pictures, if you're watching on television, in the House of Commons at the moment. They're looking over the points of the Queen's speech, which set out the government's legislative agenda today. The government says they're prioritising the cost of living, with the Prime Minister acknowledging not everyone can be shielded from rising prices. But Labour's Sir Keir Starmer said the Queen's speech was a thin address from a government that's out of touch.
This government's failure to grow the economy over a decade, combined with its inertia in the face of spiralling bills, means that we are staring down the barrel of something we haven't seen in decades. A stagflation crisis.
This Queen's speech takes those issues head on. And above all, we're tackling the economic challenges with the best solution of all, and that's an ever-growing number of high-wage, high-skill jobs, Mr. Speaker. Jobs, jobs, jobs.
Well, it was Prince Charles who delivered the Queen's speech today at the state opening of Parliament. Her Majesty missing the traditional ceremony for the first time in almost 60 years. And Buckingham Palace saying it was because of her mobility issues. Sinn Féin's Vice President says the Northern Ireland Protocol is here to stay. Michelle O'Neill's comments come as the Democratic Unionist Party insists it won't be joining a new Stormont executive unless the post-Brexit trading arrangement is changed. Ms O'Neill spoke to Boris Johnson today, accusing him of being in cahoots with the DUP.
I made it very clear to him that his pondering to the DUP and the dialling up of the rhetoric that we've heard again today, and I suspect we'll hear in the coming days, serves no purpose to provide the certainty and stability that the people here want to see.
In other news today, a male nurse who filmed under the gowns of unconscious female patients at Sheffield's Royal Hallamshire Hospital has been jailed for 12 years. 51-year-old Paul Grayson also recorded staff using the toilet between 2017 and 2020. His crimes were discovered when one victim became suspicious and discovered a stash of computer files. During sentencing, the judge said Grayson had brought shame on an honourable profession. The Duke of Cambridge has today given a personal tribute as he unveiled a memorial to those killed at the Manchester Arena bombing. He was accompanied by his wife, the Duchess of Cambridge, to the ceremony at the Glade of Light. 22 people were murdered by a suicide bomber after an Ariana Grande concert nearly 5 years ago. Prince William said it was important to remember those lost in the terror attack.
As someone who lives with his own grief, I also know that what often matters most to the bereaved is that those we have lost are not forgotten. There is comfort in remembering, in acknowledging that, while taken horribly soon, they lived. They changed our lives. They were loved, and they are loved.
Prince William speaking earlier. On TV, online and on your radio via DAB+, you're with GB News. Now it's time for Farage.
Good evening and welcome. Well, today it was the Queen's speech, that really important constitutional moment. The sovereign in Parliament, something that resulted from our settlement after our civil war way back in the 17th century. And of course, no monarch has been on the throne longer than Queen Elizabeth II. But for the first time since 1963, when she was heavily pregnant, the Queen has not delivered the speech today. No, that was done by Prince Charles. But I tell you what, it wasn't short of content. My goodness gracious me, no. 38 legislative proposals. Interestingly, we've been through this today here at GB News, proposal by proposal. And 60% of what is in the Queen's speech today are complete rehashes from what was in the Conservative manifesto in 2019. And I talked a little bit last night with Lord Frost about this. You know, if we're going to try and take advantage of what Brexit offers us, why have we waited so long? They tell me it's all because of the pandemic. But I thought because of the pandemic, the civil service were all working from home and that much more productive. I don't think so. So I have to say, there are some who feel they've been targeted by this Queen's speech, and we'll talk to Insulate Britain later on, who are not very happy. Tough new proposals coming in. But I sense that almost everything's gone just a little bit flat. You know, normally after a Queen's speech, there's a huge amount of speculation about how much of the agenda can they actually get through in the parliamentary timetable. But with 38 major legislative acts put down today, and with a further 4 being carried through from this Parliament, I would doubt in the course of the next year, I would doubt, let's say it goes 2 years until the next general election, I would doubt 25% of this even goes through. It all looks to me rather like a kiddie's wish list to Father Christmas. It just isn't going to happen. But what it is a restatement of many of the Conservative ideas that helped to win Boris Johnson that big majority back in December 2019. I have to say, I'm not inspired by this in the least, but maybe I've got this wrong. Maybe you at home think this is a new dawn for Boris Johnson's Conservative Party. Tell me, are you inspired? Farage at gbnews.uk. Well, I'm joined by Darren McCaffrey, GB News' political editor. Darren, I've got to tell you, day of the Queen's speech, and I would expect my phone to be blowing up with text messages and emails and people telling me this is fabulous, this is terrible, because I do get a lot of people contact me who think I should benefit from their wisdom.
And your phone's been silent all day.
Often I do. And honestly, there isn't much buzz at all. Yeah. There's just incredulity that this massive list of legislation, it isn't going to get done, is it?
Well, it's not going to get done because, as you rightly pointed out, it's probably 2 years to the next election. This is probably actually the last Queen's speech before that election.
Yes.
But given how they've struggled already in the previous Parliament, you'd suggest they're not going to get it all done. We look at this, Brexit opportunities. Again, you've rightly pointed out, why has that not been happening for 2 years? Levelling up, I thought that was already at the heart of the government's agenda. The immigration bill, sending migrants to Rwanda, we know about that. What I'm trying to demonstrate here is the privatisation of Channel 4. We know lots of this stuff. There was very little, actually, that was kind of new or, indeed, exciting.
How much was there about the cost of living?
Well, this is the other big point. Very little, again. Now, you may argue that trying to deal with the cost of living crisis is never going to be done in a Queen's speech. The government did repeatedly talk about trying to grow the economy. Again... Turbocharge the economy. Well, one can point out our economic growth since the financial crisis, our productivity has been pretty flat. This is a very, very big problem for Britain. I think what was fascinating today, though, are two things. First of all, the Prime Minister said we cannot spend our way out of this economic crisis. We cannot spend our way out of inflation. And the government, to be fair, is caught in a difficult position. What it doesn't want to do is pump more money into the economy or indeed give it to individuals, that you could actually make the inflation crisis even worse, that you could turbocharge the inflation crisis. While at the same time, there is a recognition politically this is doing the Conservatives damage. We heard today from the boss of Tesco saying these aren't people who are on benefits. These are my ordinary shoppers who come in, who come to the tills and say, don't spend more than 30 quid or 40 quid. Well, if it goes over that cost, leave the food in the basket because I cannot afford to take that home. And the government know they need to do something. The Prime Minister suggested it's going to come in a couple of days' time. We'll wait and see on that. We've had previous form. But frankly, the Labour Party calling for a kind of emergency budget, if you like. But frankly, I think something is going to have to give. Not entirely sure what. Windfall tax? I don't know. Chancellor's kind of been a bit... it hasn't ruled it out completely, but something is going to have to give. If it's not in the next week or so, certainly in the next couple of months.
And the much vaunted reshuffle. There were many thinking that if things went badly in the local elections last week, that there would be a reshuffle. And when you think about it, 1 in 4 Conservative candidates that was defending their seat lost. I mean, it wasn't a good result. Maybe sort of Beergate and Starmer's problems sort of overshadowed that in the minds of the public. Any thoughts of reshuffles, or is that all now gone to the back?
So the latest speculation is, and again, it is only speculation, that this could come before the summer recess. Now, why is that? Well, because ultimately, I think the Prime Minister, if he wants to properly reboot things, is going to have to wait for those police investigations from the Met, for Sue Gray's report. I think what you wouldn't want to do is kind of shuffle around your cards and then realise that you're still caught in a conundrum because of that. But you're entirely right, and I think people haven't reflected on this. The Conservatives did have a bad night last week, and what is fascinating is it's MPs in parts of London and elsewhere in the south of England who are now saying to the Prime Minister, hold on a second here, my seat is now at risk. Forget about the red wall. Look what's happening down in the south of England, because we are concerned that the Lib Dems are actually the threat
which we
to
saw.
us.
And a final thought, what was the mood of the backbenchers today? Were they, I mean, I guess they were pleased with these proposals.
Yes, I think they are, because in the end, as you say, lots of this is reflective of what the government stood on in 2019 and won a thumping majority on, an 80-seat majority. I think the big concern is there's going to be opposition to this, not least of all in the House of Lords, and they can delay things. They're going to have to drop some of this. I mean, really, the privatisation of Channel 4, that would be the first barnacle of the boat, if you like. But in the end, yes, if the government can make some progress on this, great. The one last thought I would leave you with, and this is why the economy is central to all of this, let's look at levelling up. As Michael Gove has pointed out, all that money set aside, that money doesn't go nearly as far as it did 6 months ago, a year ago, because of inflation. And that makes the government's task in a whole range of these bills so much more difficult.
Yeah, and some of it is beyond their control. Some of it is
of course,
global events, no question. Darren, as ever, thank you for that analysis. Now, one of the areas that I guess I've been, to quote David Cameron, banging on about for a very, very long time is, of course, the European Union. And having left the European Union, there are opportunities, folks. Even if you're watching this as a Remainer, there are real opportunities. A mass of regulation that came to us over nearly half a century, which could at least be simplified, and some of it removed. And yet, just nothing seems to have happened on it. Well, joining me is Catherine McBride, free market economist and fellow at the Centre for Brexit Policy. You must be actually quite pleased with what they're talking about today.
Well, I am, but I am also sorry they didn't do this 2 years ago. I'm not sure that COVID did get in their way. Some of the things that they're doing now, like they're putting through the 2 trade bills for the Australian trade deal and the New Zealand trade deal, but they've been negotiating those deals for the better part of 18 months, and so we won't see any trade from that before this time next year, probably, which is kind of crazy, especially when you consider. And even if you look at the trade deals, a lot of things that we could be importing, like right now the wheat price is very high. Australia could supply us with wheat, but they decided to only reduce the tariffs over 5 years, and they're going to keep a quota of only 80,000 tonnes of wheat on for Australia. And we import over 1 million tonnes of milling wheat.
And just sort of, just to remind people who aren't economists, if you cut tariffs, consumers get lower prices.
Exactly. And also, if you allow it in, I mean, we're not even importing it, which probably seemed like a good idea before Ukraine got invaded by Russia, but now it looks really stupid. But
so why the reluctance to do all? I mean, I had Lord Frost sitting where you are last night, and I said to him, is it that the Conservative Party just didn't really believe in Brexit or didn't think it was going to happen? Were they taken by surprise by all of this?
I think that they've been advised badly. I think a lot of their advisors don't want Brexit to happen and are quite happy to keep the same regulations we've always had. It's easy for them.
Would that be the fifth column called the civil service?
I suspect.
Dare I? I mean, you'll all complain, I know, but it does feel that way to me.
It feels very much like there were people who are prepared for us to just slot right back in the moment they get control of Westminster. So that the New Zealand trade deal and the Australian trade deal, for the things that they could really sell us and they're very competitive at, the tariffs will remain for 16 years.
It's just astonishing.
It's completely astonishing.
And in terms, Catherine, of regulation, we had this furious debate in the run-up to the referendum, during the referendum, and people like me, argued that free of European Union, we could reduce the regulatory burden on the 6 million men and women running small businesses. Give us some ideas of what British government could do to help British business, to help jobs.
Well, I've written several papers about things we could change in the city. Because we do have some very strange regulation that was designed for a European, the average European financial market, and I know you're from the financial markets as well. There is no such thing. There are very tiny Eastern European markets. One only has 15 listed companies. And of course there's London, which is a massive international market. And someone in Brussels thought they could all have the same rules. It was completely insane. But even though many papers have been written, and the Bank of England's done papers about it as well, it appears that we had to have the Queen's speech. One of the things that's in it, which I'm looking forward to, is the idea that we can drop EU regulation in financial services. And you sit there going, well, we should have done that on, January 1st.
I can remember towards the end of my time as an MEP on a Thursday night, coming back on the last Eurostar and meeting people from our regulator, the FCA, and they were pretty frank over a glass of wine or two. They'd gone to collect their weekly orders. That here we were, this global financial market, taking orders from Brussels. Catherine, we can criticise the fact this government is over 2 years too late in even putting this stuff back out. They put it in the manifesto, they've done nothing about it, they've restated it again today. But do you think they're going to get there in the end and do the things that we need to make our country more successful?
Well, I think that they're going to have to if they want to get re-elected. And one thing I'm pretty sure all the politicians in Westminster, both sides of the House, want to get re-elected. So I think that they understand that as you rightly said with Darren, that this was their manifesto in 2019. So they know that the population really likes this and wanted it in a big way. So they have to sort of select the ones that can get through. They're 38. It's going to be difficult, but quite a few of them are drafts. I'm disappointed to see that the audit reform is a draft, so that'll be pushed into next year, and that should have been done 10 years ago.
I mean, the truth is only a fraction of this is actually going to get done.
Yes. Hopefully the trade will be. Some of it is kind of weird. There's a bill that allows you to have electronic documentation in trade. And you think, do we really, is that really something that has to go through Parliament?
I think the world works that way already,
The
doesn't
whole
it?
world moved on to that many years ago.
Yeah.
If I send something to Australia with, FedEx or whatever, it's all done electronically.
Well, I hope over the course of the next few months you're going to come back and tell me that actually they are getting on with it.
I hope so too.
You hope so. I hope so. Many of you sitting at home hope so too. And maybe you can see from my conversations thus far, this has not been an inspiring Queen's speech. It's a rehash of 2019. It's a restatement of Conservative objectives. And much of that, in a way, is welcome. But what the hell have they been doing for the last 2 years? Remember, Farage at gbnews.uk. Please give me your views. And I'll be back in a moment with Insulate Britain, who were really worried about the Queen's speech.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Coming up on The Mark Steyn Show. The vax scandal continues, but those in power remain silent. Tonight we hear from BBC radio presenter Jules Sirkin, who says she's been robbed of her freedom after being injured by the vaccine. We'll be taking a closer look at the government's yellow card scheme, which one expert claims is underreporting vaccine injuries. Plus, Fleet Street great Peter Hitchens will be here to discuss the future of the Union after Sinn Féin's victory in Northern Ireland. All that and more on The Mark Steyn Show from 8 o'clock.
Well, let's find out whether you were inspired by the Queen's speech rather more than I was. Ryan says it's impossible to get all these new legislations through. The Channel 4 one is the most probable one for me. Sarah says, same old stuff being said, finding it all very boring. Now, Sarah, that's my sense of Westminster today. That's why my phone's gone dead. People are not inspired or interested by this. It's a rehash, and it begs that question, why haven't you done this before? The pandemic not being a big enough excuse, in my opinion. One viewer says, nope, because it was a load of codswallop. And another says, all I care about is that Queen Elizabeth is the greatest woman, monarch and queen, in the history of the world. Well, I tell you what, it wasn't quite the same, was it, without her there today? She's a very, very special lady, and not just to us in this country, but to people around the Commonwealth and much of the rest of the world. Now, some of the proposals were new, and we need to acknowledge that. And one of them is the Public Order Bill. Now, this has a lot to do with Insulate Britain, whose tactics and activities have perhaps gone rather further than Extinction Rebellion. And the Metropolitan Police say they spent £4 million on policing the protest between September and November last year. And much the same has been said by Surrey Police, City of London Police, Greater Manchester Police, albeit the figures are smaller. And when you look at the polling on this and what people think, and let's just remind ourselves, Insulate Britain are, blocking the M25 and stopping access, even attempting to stop a free press from working in this country. And it's no surprise, actually, that by a clear majority of over 3-1, people disapprove of what Insulate Britain are doing. And that is why the Public Order Bill has been brought in. It's going to make locking on a specific criminal offence. Those that interfere with key national infrastructure, well, they're going to find themselves with potential prison sentences of up to 12 months and an unlimited fine. But you know what? I think this is probably right. I don't think we can have people being stopped from going to weddings, funerals, holidays, or even, in the most extreme case of Insulate Britain protesters, people saying they wouldn't even allow ambulances to get to hospitals. Well, joining me is a spokesperson for Insulate Britain, Craig Scrudder. Craig, you yourself have been out there on these protests, and you clearly feel very strongly on the issue, and I understand that. I respect that. I've taken on the establishment too on issues in my time, and I get it. You feel very strongly about it. You're worried the world's going to end, and I understand that. But you yourself, you were there outside the print works, weren't you? Where certain newspapers were being produced, whose editorial line you didn't approve of, and you were actually preventing a free press from operating in the UK. When you reflect back on that, that is inexcusable.
Well, firstly, thank you for having me on tonight.
It's fine.
I'm sorry I'm a bit late. They just wouldn't let me out of makeup, I don't know if that's usual. But let me start by saying one of the facts that you said in the introduction there was that by 3-1, people disagree with what we're doing, but 71% of people in this country say that climate change is their main concern. Now, albeit that was before the cost of living crisis.
But not your actions. The point I'm making is, if you really want to educate the British public, if you really want us to feel more strongly about it, you're going the wrong way about it anyway.
Right. So if you let me finish, then it'll be
more than well.
Okay,
hey, we believe in free speech here.
Exactly. right. So let's get on to the Printworks thing that you started with.
Yeah.
OK, I was part of that because we're trying to highlight that certain publications in this country are not covering what is, according to the United Nations, according to all the climate scientists, the biggest threat humanity's ever faced. Now, we're not trying to have any editorial say or trying to...
Sounds like you are.
No, we're not. We were trying to make a point that these publications should be covering the biggest story there is and could ever be with more honesty, more fact-based journalism. Anyway, by the by, what we're here tonight to talk about...
Craig, I could argue that the threat of nuclear war is a much more imminent thing because Putin might have lost his marbles. But what I'm saying to you is this, right? What I'm saying to you is this. I understand you believe in this very strongly. I respect the fact you've got that view.
All experts and all science, Nigel.
I may not agree with that view, and even if I did, I'd say, Craig, go to China and protest, because that's where the action is.
You wouldn't say that. Come on, you're better than that.
But you know as well as me. But you know as well as me, we only produce 1% of global CO2. But that's by the by.
But over 50% of CO2 comes from these small countries, Nigel. Well over 50%.
1% from Britain. 1% from, or less than 1%.
Who started the Industrial Revolution, Nigel?
Oh, look, I'm not going to apologise for what we did 200 years ago.
Historically, per capita, no one is more guilty and more culpable than us.
We've got fewer volcanoes, and they put out a fair bit of CO2 as well.
Anyway, right, let's get on to the policing bill. That's what you want to talk about.
The point is this. Your behaviour, what you've done to obstruct people, to potentially obstruct people going to hospital in ambulances.
That's never happened, Nigel.
Well, we've seen activists on the television saying they would stop ambulances, stopping the M25.
That may be other activists.
Hang on, I'm not saying you, but your organisation. You know, by 3-1, the public disapprove of your tactics. And what the Home Secretary is proposing, or the government effectively is proposing in this bill, is that if you block key national infrastructure, you could face up to 12 months in prison.
Yeah.
What is your response to that?
Well, I mean, without being rude, I don't think Priti Patel was picked from the National Gifted and Talented programme, was she? And I think she's got the wrong end of the stick. When the IPCC said that we need big, bold action, I think she's misconstrued that to mean that we should lock people up who are blowing the alarm. Because it doesn't make any sense, does it?
Do you think
you say by 3-1 people disagree with our tactics?
Yeah, I mean, it's very clear polling.
100% of us disagree with the tactics we're having to use, but it's the only way to bring this to the media's attention.
Well, if it was working... Right, if it was working...
I'm here, Nigel, it's working.
No, you're here, and what I'm telling you, very clearly, from all that you've done over the months, and from all... I mean, you know, YouGov are a reputable polling company, this is a decent sample, only 16% have a somewhat favourable or very favourable view of your actions, and a whopping 53% are very unfavourable, all right? So it's pretty clear. What I'm saying to you actually is that reasoned argument would be more effective than what you're doing, and the Home Secretary might just be doing you a favour here.
Well, reasoned argument needs a platform.
Well, stand for election.
For the last 50...
Stand for election.
For the last 50... We don't have proportional representation, do we, Nigel? It's only us in Belarus and Europe that don't.
Yeah,
but we should have
50
Green MPs in there, and we've got one. Right? We should have a voice. We can't get a voice in this country because of the electoral system.
Right.
We are trying to raise awareness that unless we take big, bold actions now, the next 100 generations of people on the planet are going to be affected. We're not professional protesters, we're normal, everyday people. I've got better things to do than go and sit on a road.
Is blocking the M25 really the way to win these arguments?
But it isn't. It's a way of raising the issue. We're not trying to win an argument on the M25.
I have to tell you, honestly, and I mean this, and hey, look, you know, we've got more in common, actually, than most viewers would realise. We're both former city brokers. We both had passionate views that the establishment didn't approve of. And, you know, I wasn't backwards in coming forwards in my campaigns, but I always stuck within the law. I always believed that to be the right thing to do. I face the same hurdles that you face with the electoral system and all the rest of it. I know that it's damned hard, but I'm genuinely arguing, Craig, that what you're doing is turning people against the opinion that you hold so dearly.
Yeah, people aren't on board with the tactics, but as I've said, nor are we. But we're trying to get over to the public that the media aren't doing their job properly, right?
The BBC's full of it. Sky News has a climate hour every
They do,
evening.
that's brilliant, isn't it?
There's masses of it.
But it's about the news, isn't it? It should be on the news pretty much every day.
And I'll tell you this, actually.
Let me tell you a few facts.
I'll tell you this for certain, right? Under the Broadcasting Act, no balance has to be given to this debate at all. In fact, your side of the argument gets 90% of the airtime. The sceptics get very little.
There isn't another side. It's like having
there is always another side.
Nigel.
Science, hang on a sec, Craig.
No.
Science is never settled. Science is never settled.
Okay,
whether it's Newton or Darwin or whatever it may be, science is never settled. People can change their minds.
So
Events
if there was a debate on lung cancer, we should have someone on from Benson Hedges? Is that settled science or not?
Oh, absolutely. Let's hear what they've got to say.
But is it settled science, smoking and lung cancer?
A lot of people get lung cancer who haven't smoked.
Right, but there is more consensus among scientists and climate change than there is among oncologists from smoking and lung cancer.
There may well be, but here's the point. Here's the point. Disrupting the M25, we produce less than 1%.
Gets us on shows like this, Nigel. Well, let me tell you some facts.
I tell you what.
Let me tell you some facts.
I'm more than happy for you to come on because you've got passion and you believe in what you believe in.
Give me a minute. Give me a minute to talk about the science.
I'll give you 30 seconds.
Okay. So why, in the 6th richest country in the world, do 8,500 people die from winter fuel poverty every year? Why do we
Green taxes.
What? Come on, you're better
Green
than that.
taxes.
Why do we give the fossil fuel industry £10 billion, which would pay for 1 million houses a year to have air source heat pumps fitted?
Which don't work when it's cold, but go on,
why,
next one.
Why are we giving out 41 new licences to drill in the North Sea when it's quicker to get wind and solar online than it is to get new oil and gas? It's cheaper.
Because wind is intermittent and we shouldn't be importing...
Storage, Nigel.
We shouldn't be importing any gas or oil but producing our own.
Storage, Nigel.
But the point I'm making,
storage,
Craig, all those things you put, I've got counter-arguments to. We can debate this. And we should debate this. And you're very welcome to come on the show and thank you for coming on.
Thank you very much.
We'll see. Next time we hear about Craig, he'll be a manic, I've no doubt about it, doing 12 months for obstructing the law. But we can have these debates. Now, a piece of good news. Here's a piece of good news. You see, I believe in free speech, and that's why Craig was here in the studio. And Elon Musk has announced today that Donald Trump is welcome back on the Twitter platform as and when Musk takes it over. And I really think, given that Musk is not a Trump supporter, given that Musk, there's no evidence he even supports the Republican Party, but I think he's becoming actually something of a bit of a hero because he believes in free, open debate and free speech, as indeed we do here at GB News. That is good news. What is less good news, and this one's really interesting actually, having just had Craig on, and that is that the BBC, following a Panorama documentary, have had to upbraid Justin Rolat, who is one of their journalists, one of their senior journalists, because he produced a programme on Panorama wrongly stating that weather-related deaths were increasing as a result of climate change and global warming, and that all of this was said without qualification, and there is actually zero evidence to back any of it up, and Rolat has been somewhat upbraided by the BBC following a series of complaints, which I think is a very good thing. Now, a What the Farage moment. Hang on to your hats for this one. Now, Cambridge University appears to be, I think, probably just about the worst affected of all British universities, but try this for size. Cambridge University music students are being instructed to, wait for it, decolonise the ear. Yes, absolutely. Much of this classical canon is thought to be an imperial phenomenon. Yes, so Mozart and Verdi now come with something of a warning. I really wish I was making this up, but my What the Farage, simply the most cringe-making piece of news today comes once again, from Prince Harry. He has made a TV advert which will be going out in New Zealand very soon. Let's just see a short clip of it.
How's that? H!
Hi. Are you okay?
Yeah, I haven't run in a while.
Really?
You know, we actually invented jogging.
The Australians?
No, Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Oh, terribly sorry. I know you guys hate that. Kia ora.
Kia ora.
I've absolutely no idea what a girl dad is. I really don't know anything about it at all. I've no idea what that ratings guy was. I've no idea what they're trying to prove. It's something to do with sustainable travel. So if you fly to New Zealand, when you get there, don't drop a crisp packet or something like that. I mean, God help us, it's all too much. It really is time for a drink. It really is time for Talking Pints, and I'll be joined in a moment by Chris Hope from the Daily Telegraph, somebody who's written acres of newsprint about me. Maybe I'll get half a chance, who knows, to get my own back.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Enough of Prince Harry, enough of that woke culture. Let's get real. It's Talking Pints. I'm joined by Christopher Hope from the Daily Telegraph.
Cheers, Nigel.
Christopher, welcome to the show. Now, we've known each other a long time.
Yes.
We sat in this very room.
We did indeed.
You did a Telegraph debate
between
Vince Cable and myself.
He's the only one who would debate you. It was the European election in 2019, I think.
Yeah. And he literally was the only person who would come on and debate with me.
Because you were both top of the polls in that mad Brexit year period, which I'm sure viewers remember. You were top of the polls. You were vying with Lib Dems in the Brexit Party. Yeah. Do you remember that? I mean, extraordinary time.
Well, you say vying. We, in fact, beat them by 50% in the end. We got a lot more votes than they did. But it was, I like Vince Cable because you can always have a debate with Vince Cable. And we just had a chap in from, you know, I mean, whatever you think of Insulate Britain, but we had a debate.
That
we had
was
an
TV
argument.
gold, I thought. Loved it.
Well, but you've got to do that. Now, Chris, you know, you are long-time journalist, career journalist.
Yes.
Been on the Telegraph now coming up.
20 years,
20 years. It's a long time.
It is. I've covered your ups and downs and ups again at GB News.
Oh, I know. Absolutely. Now, I'm going to remind you of a little clip.
Are you?
The biggest fallout you and I had, I think, was in 2014.
Wasn't that big, was it?
Well, it was when your newspaper said in the European elections, please don't vote UKIP, otherwise the European Commission will be beastly to us. And I did ring you up and ask whether you had been taken over by some sort of Vichy state. But let's have a look at this clip. And this is Christopher Hope at the UKIP manifesto launch of 2015. Have a look at this.
Chris Hope, Telegraph. Nigel, you say you've read the document fully. Are you happy that the only blackface in the document is on the overseas aid page? And secondly, can I ask you... Thank you, Nigel. If you can answer the question, please, Nigel. And second.
As I said, you know, I've known you a very, very long time. This was Christopher Hope basically saying, look, UKIP's only got one black face. And if you looked in the room, we probably had more black
they all stood up.
Asian candidates than any other political
stood
party
up and said, we're here.
I mean,
Yes, I think it was trying to make the point about.
I think we made the point by standing up.
Back. I mean, that was the concern about UKIP for a lot of people, was that. So
yeah,
it was raising
unfairly.
the point about the international aid page being the only place where you allow those from the minority ethnic.
But the room was full of our ethnic candidates.
Yeah, and you had this appalled, shocked look on your face, and you hand clapped me.
In the end, I joined. Loved it though. It was before Trump.
Yes, it was pre-Trump.
I mean, I should have said you're fake news.
At the time, your colleague, your press guy, Gawain Taylor, the way he'd done it, he had a microphone on a broom handle, which he'd lower in, and we as journalists trying to hang on to it, and I was trying to ask more questions, and I ended up lying across the lap of Andy Bell, screaming, answer the question, Nigel, into it. But that was when UKIP was a real threat to the Tory party. I mean, David Cameron was obsessed about you. He used to call you Nigel Farage. He used to hate the fact you were called Nigel Farage. You thought I gave you some dignity you didn't deserve. That was his position, not other people's. And I think they saw that the establishment, you were a problem.
I think for journalists, UKIP was a great story, though, wasn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I think it was just always fun. It was always slightly mad. Great fun people. I mean, because it wasn't it was you tried to be professional, and it always ended up going a bit wrong.
I think in the end, we were quite professional. Yeah. But it took a very, very long time to get there.
That manifesto, which Suzanne Evans drew up, that was of all the manifestos you did in 2010, 15, 17, I think you'd gone by then. The one in 15 was the one you were most proud of. Actually.
And much of that manifesto keeps coming back in British politics.
Again, see what's being adopted by.
Keeps being adopted, keeps being debated. So I was actually very, very proud of that.
And it's hard for you. I mean, like the guy previously from Insulate Britain was saying, there's no proportional representation in this country, and that was that's what launched UKIP. Yeah. If Labour hadn't brought it in 1997,
99.
That gave you your grip on power.
That's right. It was getting into the European Parliament. That was the irony of UKIP. Yeah. It was being in the European Parliament, coming fourth in the first Euro election we fought, then third, then second, then first.
But Labour, listen viewers, Labour created this guy. Labour's fault. That's why you exist. They can't bear it.
Actually, it was in the Maastricht Treaty. Okay. There was a thing in the Maastricht Treaty, a clause in the treaty that talked about some degree of uniformity in elections. So I kind of knew in the mid-90s that at some point this was going to happen.
Was it Jack Straw, I think, of memory?
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, listen, I didn't disagree with our Insulate Britain guy, actually. No. I mean, he's
saying, I want to be represented, no one will listen to me, therefore I'm going to glue myself to things. And in a sense, that's what you were doing, right? When no one listened to you, you'd be a bit disruptive, a bit difficult.
Yeah, I stayed with the law. I think I always stayed with the law, but I did cause a bit of a noise, and did cause a bit of an upset. But, Christopher Hope, look at our politics now. You know, Brexit was, we hoped, going to sort of herald, usher a new kind of politics. We've gone straight back to 2010. We've got two Social Democrat parties. Frankly, in terms of, I mean, I think Starmer wants to cut taxes and is pro-business. I can't even work it all out. It's pretty disappointing stuff, isn't it?
It feels very bland, doesn't it? Like Buttskillism, you remember the Gateskill, Rad Butler back in the... It's like that again. I mean, I think there's no one's challenging anything. In the House of Commons today, I was making a note of MPs calling for tax cuts. David Davis, Robert Jenrick, John Redwood, of course, Labour wants also to cut the national insurance increase. I think it just seems all over the place, and it just felt quite low-key. There's an ideas void at the heart of politics. Labour's problem is that they're playing the man, not the ball. They are playing Boris Johnson, trying to make out this Boris Johnson is appalling, isn't he? You know, and let's take all these Twitter likes for that opinion. But the truth is, Labour did so well in the 90s by having ideas. New ideas, and that's what you had one big idea, which is to leave the European Union, but Labour had ideas back in the 90s. Where are those ideas?
And they had a charismatic leader. I mean, Blair, whether you love him or hate him, was a charismatic leader, and they're struggling with that now. How does the Telegraph tomorrow give us the Queen's speech? Does it?
I think, I don't edit the paper, thank goodness, for all the viewers and readers, but I think that we need to see more red meat, more tax cuts. Let's get the economy going. Action now. The view is there'll be some form of a budget in September ahead of that big increase in cost of living in October with increase on domestic bills. There's no way the Tories can go through the conference season getting lumps kicked out of them by Labour and the Lib Dems on cost of living. They've got to act sooner than that. But why not do it now? I think there's Roger Gale saying in the House of Commons today, there's a view that running scared of. But no one really knows what Johnsonism is. It's whatever he says it is day to day. So Paul Sierra's.
No, I know what it is.
What is it?
It's what he wrote in the Daily Telegraph for those well-paid columns year after year after year. We thought that was Boris Johnson.
Yeah.
You know, and don't forget, I mean, the Telegraph, your newspaper, were his biggest sponsor. But we all thought this was a small state, libertarian, low tax, free market.
He likes spending. I mean, that's the part of the problem.
But when he wrote that stuff for the Telegraph, did he really believe it?
I can't ask him. He's not here. Did get him in your chair?
I'm asking your opinion.
Well, yes. I mean, I think he did believe it, but I think he tries to have his cake and eat it, to use that awful term about birthday cake. I think he's trying to spend heavily, borrow more. That's what worries the Treasury. Worried about the cost of borrowing. That's why they're not allowing to go early on money for household bills. He wanted to go before the spring statement. Rishi Sunak said no, and now it's all about whether, if Rishi survives the reshuffle in July, not clear, then...
Now that's the serious stuff, but of course you're also doing the Peterborough column now, the gossip column.
Oh, I love that.
And this is what you like best, really, isn't
I
it?
give you a weekly call, don't I, about your search for a London club that allows you to smoke outside, all these things.
But you're enjoying that enormously.
I do. I love it, yeah. I actually love the Telegraph. I'm honoured to work there. I love the readership, I love the people. And I've been there for so long, you start to almost live and breathe the DNA of the place. It's fantastic.
Well, as I said, at the start of this, I've got to know you incredibly well over the years. We've agreed on many things, we've disagreed on many things. But of course, there is one part of your life that I want you to share with our viewers, which, and I think you said to me once, you're never more than a phone call away.
No.
From your life completely changing.
Yeah.
And the reason I want to have this story is not because of the awfulness, but because actually it's led to some good things.
Hugely good things, yeah. There was in April 2007, a bus went out of control in south west London where we were living, and it did hit my wife Sarah and our daughter Pollyanna and Sarah's mum. Killed Sarah's mum, Pollyanna lost a leg, and Sarah's badly injured. And it was your world just atomises.
And you were literally at my desk.
I was at my office at the Telegraph, ran out, went back and tried to deal with appalling situation there at the scene, and trying to just get childcare for the other two kids. My parents live in Liverpool. It was a disaster. So I think it's time really slowed down. I think as I got through that period. I know you be in your plane crash. You remember this, don't you? When you
but that was easier. But that was easier. That was me having to deal with it.
Yeah. I was trying to hold it all together.
You're talking about a young 2-year-old daughter, a mother-in-law that's been killed, and a wife that's. I mean, it's much harder when it's other people.
Much harder, but we haven't really reflected too much on it. We have. Obviously, we talk about it. I wrote about it at the Telegraph. That was hugely cathartic for me. Readers sponsored Sarah, my wife, to run a half marathon. That led to about £120,000 being raised. We took some of that money, gave it to a different charity, and then we set up our own charity called Elizabeth's Legacy of Hope, which raises money for amputee kids in India and Africa. And Sarah, she's amazing. She campaigns for running blades on the NHS. Previously, the NHS gave you wooden legs if you're an amputee to get you mobile. That's why you get crutches at the end of the hospital.
Yep.
But with extra money from George Osborne, in 2 budgets, they paid money for these running blades for kids to run around and play with their friends. And Sarah sets up the Sarah Hope line, which works with bus drivers to make the roads safer, an incident support line. So, and she got an MBE last week.
And she got the MBE last week.
That's
well done.
Thank you. Cheers,
Mrs. Hope. I think that's an amazing achievement.
Yeah.
And Pollyanna, who was so little at the time, and who I've managed to meet a couple of times.
You have, yeah.
And what an advert for young children going through adversity.
Just dances now. Great dancer. On a point leg, specially made. So she's, I think it puts, some things into some perspective. I think, we look at Ukraine, we see the horrors there, and it's just getting through that because, of course, you live with this, just getting through initially is the easier part, but dealing with the legacy of those things is harder.
Yeah. Well, as you said to me that time, you're never more than one phone call away.
A phone. Out of a clear blue sky, bad things can happen, but it's how you cope with that which is what matters.
Well, I have to say, the Hope family have done remarkably well. And Christopher, thank you for joining me on Talking Pints. I don't agree with everything you said about me over the years.
I thought you were going to beat me up, Nigel. You've been like a pussycat.
I was never going to do that.
You're like a pussycat.
It's lovely to have you on. Right. It's time now for Barrage to Farage, where you send your questions in, and I don't cheat. I don't look at them before, I promise you. Here goes, and I've kept Christopher Hope here to help me, because if they're too tough, they're going straight to him live on telly. So, Bob asks me, do you agree that the Labour Party always leaves behind a financial disaster when they are in power? I think the answer to that, Bob, is very often yes. Very often, yes. The most extraordinary thing was that in the early years of Gordon Brown being a Chancellor, it seemed that conservatism and conservative newspapers were so smashed to pieces that nobody was critical. I tried with a jeweller from Southampton to injunct against the sale of 400 metric tons of gold at an average price of $258 an ounce. Can you believe it? I got nowhere. But financial competence, and here's the point, here's the kicker, Bob. In '92, the Conservative Party lost their reputation for financial competence during the ERM crisis, and that was much of what cost them the '97 election. And I'm worried, Chris, for the Conservatives, that actually financial competence isn't looking too good for them right now, is it?
That's right. I mean, Gordon Brown never lived it down. You described there selling off the gold, and the Tories never recovered from Black Wednesday. It won't be that was when interest rates went up 3 times in a day. Do you remember those headlines? Whether that happens again, that's a real moment. I mean, in terms of everyone thinks there's a lot of pressure on all sides at the moment in the economy.
Yeah, no. Robbie asks, is Prince Charles up to it? Is he up to it?
Yeah, we proved this today, didn't he?
Yes. Look, I mean, he's not in the same class as the Queen. He will do his best. He is a genuine, sincere and decent man. I just think he's too political. I think you'll find it very difficult to keep his mouth shut. And unless he shows much more discipline as king, as and when that day comes, than he has as Prince of Wales, we're going to be in for some very rocky times. Mick asks, do you think the Queen's speech will pave the way to unleash the benefits of Brexit? I hope so. What have they spent 2 years? They've done nothing for 2 years.
They've got 1,500 bills, or measures, EU measures with the words EU on. This is Suella Braverman, she's a Spartan, opposed all 3 versions of Theresa May's deal. She's behind it, along with Jacob Rees-Mogg. You've got the best people on that, and you've got a chance of doing it by the next election.
Well, I hope to goodness that they actually do it. I really, really do. Right. One viewer asks, is the Lord's value for money? No, it's an absolute joke. It's stuffed full of Blair's mates and Cameron's mates.
Would you join, Nigel?
I don't want to be in the House.
Yes, you do. You want the ermine round you.
I don't want to be in the House.
Come on.
You see, these boys are always journalists.
You want £300 a day. It's a great.
I know. I'm sure I could do better than that. Honestly, I'd drive for Uber and do better than that if I worked hard. It's a joke, the Lord's, isn't it? It's out of touch. It's ludicrous.
It's Lib Dem dominated. There aren't many. There are like 3 UKIPers from memory. 2.
All of whom defected to us. And you know what? UKIP never ever got given a single nomination.
Nigel Farage, quickly.
Brexit Party never got a single nomination. And 104 Lib Dems are in there. It's a joke. It's got to go. It's past its sell-by date.
You want to do it then.
And I don't want to be there. Ignore Hope. He's a gossip journalist. That's what they're like. The Peterborough column will talk about it this week. I'm done. Over to Mark Steyn.
Don't let that Hope guy talk you into a life peerage, Nigel. Hold out for a dukedom or a marquisate at the very least. Great show tonight, Nigel. On tonight's Mark Steyn show, Peter Hitchens is here to talk about Sinn Féin and what their victory means for the Union. And we'll have more on the victims of the vaccine and their abandonment by the British state. Stick around. That's all coming up after the weather.
Hello, I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. Showers will continue across northern parts of the UK during the next 24 hours, with more prolonged rain appearing across some parts of the south, although likely to avoid much of the far southeast. Low pressure in charge